We lost them. We lost them and we don't know where to find them. Nowhere that we went could we find them. Our sorrow was very great. For many years we used to go out every now and again and look for the Entwives, walking far and wide and calling them by their beautiful names. But as time passed, we went out more seldom and wandered less far. Treebeard laments the loss of the Entwives in the Two Towers to Merry and Pippin. The Entwives aren't dead, he explains. They're missing, and he doesn't know where to find them. He had not seen the Entwives in thousands of years. So what happened to the Entwives? Are they still alive? And if so, where are they? No one knew whence they came or first appeared. The High Elves said that the Valar did not mention them in the music. But some, like Galadriel, were of the opinion that when Yavanna discovered the mercy of Ilúvatar to Aule on the matter of the dwarves, she besought Ilúvatar through Manwë, asking him to give life to things that were made of living things and not of stone. Outside the music of creation, Yavanna's husband, Aule, created something of his own, a people for himself he called the dwarves. The dwarves were sprung from the ground and valued rock and stone and smithying, just as Aule. But because this was done without permission from Ilúvatar, Manwë, the chief of the Valar, commanded that he was to destroy the dwarves. Aule was quite distraught and pleaded with Ilúvatar for mercy on his creation. Having mercy, the dwarves would be permitted to live as long as they were put to sleep and did not awake until after the elves awoke. Yavanna was alarmed by this decision. Her creation, plants and trees, could not move from harm or defend itself from the dwarves seeking to use them for their smithying. So she petitioned Eru Ilúvatar through Manwë to allow her her own creation as a protector. This was also granted under the same conditions. These tree-like giants would stay asleep until after the elves awake. These creatures were, of course, the Ents. Their waking would summon spirits from afar, souls sent to inhabit trees, or else slowly take the likeness of trees owing to their inborn love of the tree. And Yavanna spoke over them, saying, "They are to be held in reverence, and their just anger shall be feared. In the forest shall walk the shepherds of the trees." The Ents thus had mastery over stone, and really were made with the express purpose to protect trees and plants from those that would wish to destroy them in the name of stonework and metalwork. The Ents, when awakened, walked far and wide, as the forest covered much in the early days of Middle-earth. Ents loved the great trees and the wild woods and the slopes of the high hills, and they drank of the mountain streams and ate only such fruit as the trees let fall in their path. The elves found them and indeed taught them to speak, instilling also the desire to speak to other trees of the forests. Wandering in wild woods was part of the Ents. It called to them, and as shepherds, much of their work entailed rooting out rotten and bad trees from the forests. By the Third Age, there were only 3 Ents from before the evil Valar Morgoth came down from the north: Fangorn, Finglas, and Fladrith. The eldest of these 3 Ents is Fangorn, or Treebeard in the common speech. Gandalf once called him, with only a little hyperbole, the oldest living thing that still walks beneath the sun upon this Middle-earth. As such, Ents cannot die. They will continue living forever, unless destroyed or grow, as Treebeard calls it, tree-ish, withdrawing from the world and their created purpose, losing a lot of their sentience and becoming like the trees they were created to shepherd. It took a few millennia, but Yavanna's warning, her very purpose for these tree herders, comes true. The Ents fulfilled their designed purpose when they marched on Isengard for the destruction of Fangorn Forest near the end of the Third Age. Saruman knew Treebeard and would often speak with him. I wonder if Saruman didn't know of Yavanna's spoken purpose imbued into these shepherds of the forests, and that's why he would dare kindle their wrath. Or more likely he did know, but his hubris, often displayed, pushed this warning aside as a non-threat. Regardless, as depicted in the Two Towers, the Ents' dominance over stone was on full display, making quick work of the stone of Isengard, its machinery and furnaces. Just as Yavanna had predicted, the trees, which could not move to avoid destruction, had seen such a fate, and her protectors, the shepherds of the trees, had enacted their just anger upon Isengard. But by that time in the Third Age, the Ents had been long estranged from their Entwives. For a time before the coming of Morgoth, the Entwives dwelt close to the Ents in gardens of their own creation, just outside the forests. For Ents and Entwives cared for different things. Ents gave their love to all that they met in the world. They loved the great trees, the wild woods, drinking in the mountain streams, and talking with the trees. But the Entwives didn't want to talk to the trees. They gave their minds to the lesser trees and to the meads in the sunshine beyond the feet of the forests. And they saw the sloe in the thicket, and the wild apple, and the cherry blossoming in the spring, and the green herbs in the waterlands in the summer, and the seeding grasses in the autumn fields. They did not desire to speak with these things, but they wished them to hear and obey what was said to them. The Entwives ordered them to grow according to their wishes, and bear leaf and fruit to their liking, for the Entwives desired order, and plenty, and peace, by which they meant that things should remain where they had set them. Treebeard describes them as bent from their work, hair bleached and dry as twigs from the sun, and cheeks rosy as apples. As such, the Entwives made gardens to live in. But the Ents went on wandering, and only came to the gardens now and again. Then, when Morgoth came, the Entwives crossed the great river, the Anduin, and made new gardens, and tilled new fields, and the Ents saw them more seldom. After Morgoth was overthrown, the land of the Entwives blossomed richly, and their fields were full of corn. They taught many men, and they learned the crafts of the Entwives, and because of that, they honored the Entwives greatly. But the Ents, they were only a legend to the men, a secret in the heart of the forest. Near the end of the Second Age, the Entwives found their land in the midst of the battle for Middle-earth. To combat the advance of the last alliance of elves and men down the Anduin River, Sauron burned their gardens to the ground. The Ents later crossed the Anduin in search of the Entwives, and they found but a desert. The blossoming, luscious gardens of the Entwives were wasted in a land which men now call the Brownlands. Treebeard made Pippin and Merry describe the Shire and its country over and over again. The lush green fields, the acres and acres of farmland, the open country with beautiful trees bursting with wildflowers. "I think they would like your country," he said. Twice more, Treebeard reminds the hobbits to look for Entwives in the Shire. This was all met with a kind of hopeless promise. Though Treebeard had given up looking for the Entwives, he still longed for them to be found once more. However, Tolkien postulates in a letter that many, if not all, the Entwives were most likely destroyed when Sauron burned their gardens. Some, of course, may have fled, or more probably became enslaved by Sauron. After all, he explains, Sauron must have some provision of agriculture to support his soldiers and metalworkers. If any survived, they would indeed be far estranged from the Ents, and any resumption of their harmonious relationship would be difficult. In a later letter, Tolkien himself admits he's not sure what happened to the Entwives. With most, if not all, of his mythos, he felt the story of the Ents already existed, and he was merely recording it. He would simply wait until more of their story became known to him. He would even reflect in some letters that the chapter on Treebeard and the Two Towers, in particular, felt as though he was reading someone else's writing. But perhaps Tolkien did record, possibly without realizing it, the answer to this mystery in a curious conversation between hobbits that Entwives may, in fact, be in the Shire. Well before Frodo set forth from the Shire with the ring, Sam sat in a corner of the Green Dragon Inn at Bywater. With him sat Ted Sandyman, the miller's son. They discussed strange stories heard around the Shire, a foreshadowing of the evil times to come. But right now, these were mere stories. One such tale Sam told was of treemen, giants, one bigger than a tree seen up beyond the North Moors not long back. Ted laughs naturally. He thought it was preposterous. But Sam insisted that his cousin saw the elm tree walking. And besides, there wasn't that type of tree on the North Moors anyways. Walking tree-like giants can only fit one description. Ents. If they're seen in the Shire, Sam's cousin most likely saw an Entwife. Much of the Entwives remains shrouded in unknowns and half-told tales. Indeed, much of what is known about the Ents remains legend, from their creation in the music, to their charge of protecting all living growing things, to the Entwives' cultivation of gardens and their disappearance. Sadly, many Entwives were probably destroyed in the Second Age. Some seem to be striding through the northern regions of the Shire. What is clear, though, according to Tolkien, is that the reunion of Ent and Entwife is not for this world, but the next. Though some may have found what Treebeard lost, he will never see them in this world. In the Song of the Entwives, where the Ent and Entwife sing back and forth to each other, determined that their land is best, in the end, they come together in one voice and speak of a time where, together we will take the road that leads into the west, and far, far away we'll find a land where both our hearts may rest.